Okay, so you want to work with the movie database that we worked with earlier from Netflix, and we want to, all right, 1 second, and we want to be able to have an object or some sort of an object-oriented way of reading this data and populating the objects from the database on the class that we're going to define. So to be able to define a class, we use the word class, and then we can choose any name we want. Netflix would be Netflix. Show would be okay. A movie would be just as good. Netflix show is probably more generic. So when we create a class, we also end it with the colon here, like that. And then we have to think about the instance variables. We have to think about the properties that this class, this Netflix, did I spell it correctly? Yes. Looks a little funny, I'm not sure why. But anyways, now we have to think about the properties that would belong to this class. Well, we know that from what we are seeing here, we're gonna have some sort of an ID that would be like a show ID, and we are going to see a movie type or a show type, and we're gonna work with a title and a release year, like that. And then I think this is good. This is really good for now. We don't have to do the entire data set. These four will be sufficient. So the number one thing we want to do when we are working with a Python class is to build a constructor that will initialize these properties. But we don't even have properties, but these properties are going to be designed inside or initialized inside a special function that's called init, and starts with an underscore, and it uses the keyword init. So this is a very special function that must be used. So when we create instances, so every one of those guys will be a movie. So that's an instance of a Netflix show. So every time you create a new instance, every time you read a new record, this function is going to be called and is going to initialize the object with these properties that we have here. So clearly now we need some work to do. How do we create an instance that's unique for this specific line here or this record versus that specific record? We use a keyword called self. We use a keyword called self, like this. And here we are going to, from that self, and it's a function, I'm going to use that self to access the properties that I have to design as part of this class. And I usually like to start them with an underscore show ID, because I want to show you the difference. And each one of those guys will be initialized by a parameter that we pass from the outside world. We want to read the data from the file. So clearly we don't have, this data is not embedded here. This data will be read from the file and we will be passed to this class in this specific function as a parameter. So now we want to pass a show ID. And now you see that this show ID will be used to initialize this specific instance variable of the class. That's the reason why I'm using underscore to distinguish the property that belongs to this specific object that's coming from here versus the actual parameter value. Okay? I don't know if you will follow me or not on this, but this is gonna take some time. So now the property that belongs to the object here that is not known to have any type will be initialized by a type that we're gonna get from the file. And the type here, as you can see, is a keyword in Python, because we know how to use the type to see the type of a variable or something. So we're gonna use a different name, and we're gonna call it show type, like that. And then here we're gonna use underscore type, because this is what I want to my property to be named. If I want to call it like show type like that, I could also call it like this. But the reason why I'm using this underscore again, and I have to repeat that over and over, is because I want to distinguish the property that belongs to the class versus the data that's going to be coming from the file as a parameter. So now let's do the rest of them. Self underscore underscore title like that, and this title here is going to be coming from the title over here as a parameter. And the last but not the least is the release. Let's just call it here like that, and here we're gonna call it r underscore year. Doesn't matter what we call it, we are free to do whatever we want. So this is basically the function that is going to take the values here and construct an object and put the properties of each populate the properties of this object. And we already know that we want these 4 properties, and I'm including them as a comment here to remind you that we want these guys. The reason why I'm putting them on top here, because in some other languages you actually declare these parameters first before you start constructing them. In Java and C++, they actually make this very concrete. They make these very clear. You have to give them a scope and do and declare them and make them whether they belong to the class or the object and so on. In Python, you basically declare them inside the constructor. These are the properties that is going to belong to this class that's going to mimic a record coming from a database or a file. So enough of that. Now we want to declare functions to access the different properties. So I want to get the show ID. Get the show ID. This is my function here. And it's going to take a self parameter and is going to return self dot underscore underscore this guy here like that. So this function here, when I say when this object has been instantiated and has become concrete from the values that come from the file, when I say give me the show ID for this specific object, it's going to give me the show ID if whether it's here, whether it's here, whether it's here. And I will show you how this is going to happen. So now let's create another function, get the release. Is it show type? Get show type. Show type. And is also going to take a self. And this self here is needed because we want to get the show type property that belongs to the class. And I am going to return that like this. Now I'm going to define another function to get me. So as you can see, we're basically declaring functions that will return all these values once they are instantiated, once they have become populated with data coming from the file. And right now we're building the mechanisms to give us this, but we haven't seen it in action yet. We're gonna see it in action when we're done, and then we'll read from the file. So here we're gonna get the title using the self. So the self here, we're just gonna return that self dot underscore title like this. And the last one we're gonna get what are we gonna get? Release year like this. And actually we'll call it year, so I'm just gonna use get year like that. And is also gonna take a self dot release year. Underscore another underscore like that. I'm not sure why it's not recognizing it. Okay. All right, so this is good. I could also define functions that set the each individual value as well, but I'll do that later. I just want to make progress now quickly. So now I'm going to create another cell, and I want to read this file. I want to read this file. So I'm just going to open that file, and this file is called toy, T-O-Y _, and believe it or not, it immediately auto-completed it for me, better than me typing. So this is gonna return a file reader or handle, whatever you want to call it. And if I read the file one line at a time, or one record at a time, or one movie, or one show, whatever you want to call it, for each movie, in maybe you want to call it a show because it might not be a movie, in the file reader, I can print each show, and this is gonna read the file. So I know now that I'm able to read the file. Very good. All right. Now what? Now I want to create objects, multiple objects of this guy here, and each one of them will be carrying the data coming from the lines here. Am I making sense? So what you see here, these data items here, will be taken. We'll read them one at a time. And what I'm gonna do actually here, I'm gonna just read the first line, read line like that, because now I want to get rid of the header here because it's not needed. And if I print, now I've gotten rid of the header. Now I'm printing the first one immediately, as you can see. So that's the first one here. As you can see, the first one here is very clear that has been printed here. Okay. Now I want to break this line here by a comma, right? I want to split because they are comma separated, right? That's what I want to do. And so that would be show components, right? So if I print this is gonna start giving me the breaking components for each one. So now you can see each item of those guys, each line has been read and then broken into smaller components. Now I want to work with these components, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to work with the first 4 components, right? And populate a class object from the Netflix show. How do I do that? Okay. We could actually, here's what we can do. So this will be a show like that. We can call it Netflix _show. And now I'm going to instantiate a Netflix object and call this init function. So I can use the data here coming from the file and push it through the parameters of this function to populate the properties of the object. So every object will be fully populated. Just like we created tuples, but with the tuples we had to open a parentheses and close parentheses. Now we're basically working with functions and passing variables, passing parameters. So now this is what I want to do. I want to create an object of type Netflix, and I want to call this init function. To be able to do that, you actually never have to call the init function. You basically call the init function indirectly by calling this class here by its name. You call the class by its name as a function, and this is how you actually end up constructing a new object. But this object is incomplete because it takes 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters. Where do we get these parameters? Well, we get these parameters from here, from the file. So here's how we're gonna get it from the file. We know that these components are right here. We've been printing them, and this guy is at index 0, this guy is at index 1, and the index 2, index 3. So let me use the components here by index 0. This is going to give me the show ID, and index 1 is going to give me the show type, like that. And index 2 is going to give me the title. And index 3 is going to give me the year. Like that. All right. So now by doing this, I have already constructed an object. And I populated it from the values coming from the file. So let me comment this out. I want to show you, if we print this one more time, we only see the values coming from the file. We don't see any values coming from objects yet. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to comment this out this time. And I'm going to work with this object. So now if I print anything that I don't have anything being printed. Well, I first I need to run this. Now I have the object being stored in memory. Now I want to be able to see this value, this class here being populated, and I want to make sure that if I print the title, I want to see different titles. And how do we do this in object-oriented? I'm going to use this object here, and I will get the device. I will call the device that gives me the title. So there is a function that I created here. It's called getTitle, like that. And if I run this with every object, it's supposed to be giving me the titles here that we have. So the first one called Kingside Adventure, whatever it takes, Transformer. So let's see if we're gonna get these titles or not. I'm going to print now, but as you can see, I am only printing data coming from the object. I'm not printing anything in the file anymore. That's why I comment this out. If I do this, as you can see, the data now is actually coming straight from the object. Can I get anything else? Let me show you. We're gonna get show ID, like that. And the show ID is supposed to be inside the object that we just created, and we're gonna call it get what? I don't have to memorize anything. I can go back to my class and I see that I created a function here called get ID. So I never have to worry now about the indices as we did back in using tuples. The reason why we're working with indices here, because it's coming from a file. But once we populate a class, we never have to worry about these indices anymore. So now I'm gonna get this guy here, and now I'm gonna do /t like this, and I'm also going to get /t, and then I'm going to get the show type. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't matter now the order, because again, the class is fully populated by the data. It doesn't matter which one of those guys was declared first. The order here doesn't matter, as long as you have a function that you know how to use and call by its name, then you never have to worry about the index anymore. So here is the type, get show type, like that, and I'm gonna use it with the reference to the object here. So the dot operator here referenced the object that we created, and this object here is of type Netflix show, which is the class that we just created. Remember that this is something that we have to be mindful of. So what else do we need to show here? We can also print the year as well. /n/t/t, and you'll see why I'm doing the /t, even though it's kind of a little not readable. Show type, and then release year, like that. And if I come here, dot, and if I actually I'm pushing on the tab here, but it's not giving me the okay. Get year. For some reason, the year does not seem to be okay. It doesn't matter. I think we'll be okay. I'm not sure why it's not because I did not return it. That's the reason why is not finding it here. So now if I try to access that year using the tab, it will get like that, and it's supposed to be telling me that there is a year here. Hopefully, doesn't matter. It's still kind of acting funny. We might still have an error. Get year. Okay, so now we return the year. We should be able to get the year. Very good. So the reason why I'm doing all of this is because I want to show you something really neat. You've probably seen it before. Now, as you can see, the show here is the ID came from the file 811. Make this much bigger. 811-456-28. 811-456-28. And here are the rest of the properties. And then this is the second one, 8011. And the last one is 8011-7902. Here you go. Fire Chaser right here. And it's a TV show, and it was released in 2017. So this is basically it. There's nothing else special about reading from a file and populating an object. But as you can see, these objects that we've been reading, we've been also recycling. So these objects here now are lost. If I'm trying to work with any object now, the only one that I can work with is going to be the last one because it's been overridden. So if I say give me the title, okay, finally the year is showing up. Give me the title here. It's going to give me the title of the last one. What about the rest of these guys? Well, remember, we recycle those every time we run into that loop. We ran the loop and we looped over the object. We took the next line here and the next line, and then we populated the value. So we erased the old value. How do we keep track of all these objects? Well, that would be really simple. It would not be very different from what we've done before. We can call this like a show database, Netflix show database, like that, and we can declare a list like this. And what we can do now is to use that list here because we know it's working. And now I'm going to append that list by the movie that I'm creating here. So now it doesn't matter whether it was lost or not, because I still have access to that list outside the loop. So now if I want to read these guys one at a time, again from the list, if I come here for a show in that list, in that show database, and if I print, now I'm gonna use that show instead of the other object, because this is a list of objects. Now my object here is called a show because it's a local variable that are outside here. It doesn't matter what I call it. It's still kind of a local variable inside that loop. Now if I run it, I get an error. What did we not do? We need to run this one more time, like that. And then if I called the function, but I've forgotten to print it. And as you can see, now we are entirely off of that file. We are not doing anything from the file anymore. We can operate. And here's the list again. If I want to get the release year for print the show, I'm gonna call it the movie this time. It doesn't matter what I call it. I just want to show you that now it has become very independent from the file. Now I say get the year. It's giving me all the years. If I say get let me get something from the class here. Get the show type. So if I want to see all the types of shows that I have. Here they are. And clearly the first one is a movie. The last one is a TV show. So we are indeed doing everything as expected. So questions now, please.
Professor, I was with you up until the last, very last thing you did. When you create a list, well, what is in that list? Because I print the list and it doesn't look like there's anything in it. It's just, I don't know the term for it. Like functions are in the list?
No, objects.
Objects are in the list.
Correct. So the list here is empty, okay? And I remember I put it outside the loop, because if I continue to loop inside the list, then I'm only every time if I put it inside here, every time I loop is gonna be empty. So I'm only gonna store one object if I put it inside. But if I put it outside, now every time I loop, the list has already been initialized. Now I only append. So now what I'm appending here is an object that I created and populated from the data elements that I'm reading from that file here. And now I'm appending the object that's been fully populated right here into the list. So what is it's nothing really. What you see here is nothing really other than just a variable that we store in the suppose if I did not do this, if I did not do the if I remove that word, the Netflix show, what's it called? The Netflix show. That's right. What are you looking at here? You're looking at a tuple, right? It's exactly the same way as a tuple. Now, when you work with this guy here variable, you store it here. So this is a list of tuple if you do it this way. But if you reverse back that way, this gives you an object, and this object, instead of having to work with the tuples at index 0 and index 1, now you work with functions. You work with a title, you work with a show type, you work with a year, as opposed to indices. You see the difference? Do you want me to run it one more time without the as a tuple first? Yes? I think I might have lost you guys.
Oops, I was just noting, if you do print NF show DB, you get the list of objects. You don't really see any data, you just see. So it's almost like you put in a box in the list, and if you want to unpack the box, then you give it more commands, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Okay, right now I am the object, the data that I'm reading from the file, I'm storing them as a tuple, and that tuple I'm storing in a list. I'm gonna run this for the time being, okay? I'm not gonna do anything else. And now I'm going to remove this guy here. I'm just gonna clean it, and I'm gonna remove this because now it doesn't make sense, because I declared if I call these guys on this and it's not an object, is gonna give me an error. Let me show you. This is gonna give me an error because it doesn't know what this is. According to Python, now this is no longer an object of type Netflix show. This is right now a tuple. Okay, so I'm gonna comment this out to work with it as a tuple. Now I'm going to print the list of tuples, and as you can see, it's gonna give me all the different items. Now if I want to get the ID, I'm gonna pass the index. That's gonna give me the ID. Now if I want to work with the title, I'm gonna pass the first index. Sorry, that would be the second index. Here are the titles. But now I'm not using object-oriented. How do I convert this into an object? Then I'm going to create objects of this type, of Netflix show type, and I'm gonna pass these guys that I passed as a tuple. I'm just gonna pass them exactly the same way as an object. And this object now is gonna be stored in a list. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. But now if I print this just as it is not going to, oops, I'm gonna run this one more time. Is not going to recognize these indices because now this is an object. So if I run it as an object now, it's going to tell me I am working with an object and this object has a memory address of this. Now if I want to get the actual values, I need to invoke the functions. So show, and then I'm just gonna use get. Well, it's not recognizing it for whatever reason, because yeah, it's an iterator. When the iterator doesn't keep track of, I think, doesn't. So now let's get the title like that, and it's a function. Now we get the title from the object because it is an object at this point, because we declared that he's here as an object. And if I undo this, now I'm able to see it inside here. You see my point? Now if I want to get the show type, I run it. Here it will also work as an object as well. Do we see the difference or we don't?
I see it.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. It's really nothing. The object is really nothing except it's a different data structure that is similar in a way to the tuple that we used in the past. However, in the tuple, as you can see, we have to work with indices. The beauty about objects that we can also involve computation as well. Like I can do some queries. I can say I can ask questions about the movie. If the movie is say defined is action. If I know the genre, for instance, and I can ask questions and I can say self that, and I can say if self title say equals, I don't know, king of adventure, for instance, but that would be really bad. What we need here, if we want to add like some sort of a genre like that, and then if the genre was, if the genre was say if it's say it's action, you could say you return action adventure or something, adventure. But with the tuples, you don't have the luxury to create new functions. You only get the values by the indices. That's it. But here you can create a lot of things, a lot of functions associated with the class. You can say for the items, remember the grocery items, we created a class called the grocery item, and we can embed a function that says, give me the total of the item based on the state, and that would actually include a function that would return the total, the number of items times the price times plus the state tax. If the state was X, then do a certain percentage. If the state was Y, do a certain rate. Doesn't matter. But here in the tuples, you really cannot. The tuples, that's all you get. You get something just like that, and then the story ends. But classes can give you a lot more. You can also change the values you can set the year, for instance. You can create set year, and then you are going to pass a new value, new year, like that. And you are going to use this value here, and here also you want to pass the self dot year. So you are going to take the old value of the year, and then you pass a new value. So this is how you, and then you actually need, sorry, this is a define function, and this is going to set the year, like that. So now if I run this one more time, suppose the database had, say that this movie here was done in 2010 or 2011, and now the database said it was done in 2019. So why don't we correct it? Okay, let's correct it. I'll show you how to do this. So now I'm going to loop with the values coming from the database. Let me run this one more time. I just want to make sure that I have everything in memory. Now I'm going to ask if movie get title where's the title here? Get title, like that. If the movie here get the title equals this guy here, and I'm gonna copy it like that, then you are going to set the value. So you're going to call set set the year to 2011, like we said. Now we can also print, and then we're gonna print here, we're gonna print that movie title, and we're also gonna print the year as well. And let me do the year before and do it after, because that makes sense. Year before, and here is the year after. And I'm just gonna put this right here at the beginning. So if I run this, actually this has to be done here. Okay. All right. So this is the year before. It has to be done before I set the value, and then I'm gonna print it after that. But I also need to print the year, not the title. All right. So if we run this, okay, I'm just gonna, we are not getting anything. I'm not sure why. Let's just print the movie title to see if the list is empty or not. Get title, like that. Okay. All right. So we have the titles. Because it's called North of the Kingdom, so we did not have the entire title. That's why I was not able to find it. So now if we do this, and I want to remove this guy. So the year before, because we changed it before. Let me do it one more time. Let me populate it from the database here. So we know it's 2019 now. And if we go here, now it shows it was before 2019, and it was actually changed when we set the value, as you can see. So the self here accesses this specific object, and it knows the value from before, and then it sets that specific object that you're working with. So this is the self is very important. The self is what gives you this object and that specific property that belongs to this object. Oops. I don't know if this is clear or not, but you guys just have to work with this until you feel you are getting a good handle of that. But I'm always happy to answer questions if you guys have any other questions beyond the course.
I got it working.
You did? Okay. Brian, how?
So
go ahead.
Looks like Brian left for a class. He said in the messages.
Okay,
my question is this changing a tuple, or what are we changing when we do the set?
No, that we got rid of the tuple. The tuple was just a demonstration when we created that list. The tuple is absolutely irrelevant in this whole session. The reason why I wanted to demonstrate that using a list here is no different than using a tuple, this is when I just removed this. But right now, we're only working with objects and classes, okay? The tuples will never give you, let me just remove this. The tuples will never give you these functions. The functions here are working with objects. And these functions are the functions that we declared here inside this class. The tuple will, remember, if you have to work with a tuple, you have to access these items by indices. And none of this here have demonstrated that we have indices, right? We call these functions because these functions, we implemented them up front in the class, right?
Right.
Professor Med, my question is, if you scroll up a little bit, like,
Tyler's here. Okay, very good.
How you doing, Professor Med?
Good.
Good. So yeah, my question is, where is the information coming from when you do return self dot show ID? Like, where is it getting that information from in that function, like right. Def get show?
Very good. Remember, Tyler, every class has some properties that we define, okay? And these properties are empty until we initialize them. And the way we initialize them is by passing parameters to this specific function that's called init. Init means initialize. This is just another a short word for initialize. And initialize is not a function that you call directly, okay?
Right.
It's a function that you call indirectly by invoking the class name. You make the class name as a function, as you can see here. This is the class name, and we made it a function. And we pass the exact same parameters in the same order as we pass to this function here.
Okay.
Right? So these values here, these properties belong to the class, belong to the object that will be instantiated from this class. But these values are gonna come from outside world. And in this case, the outside world is a file. We used the Netflix movie database or movie file to read from, and then as you can see here, we created a file handle. We read the lines one line at a time. Okay, we broke each line here by what's it called, a comma, and then this has given us a list, and this list had components, and I used these components, the components here of the ID and the movie name, to pass him to populate the actual properties here in the file. So when I return these properties after it was populated. If I create an object and that's empty, it will not. In some other programming languages, you can create multiple constructors. Okay, in Python there is a way you do that if you make these parameters optional. But for the time being, I don't want to confuse you. I just want to show you that when you return these guys are going to be returned after the class is being populated by these values. So remember, the first thing we did, we called the constructor, and this constructor invoked this function here. That's a really good question, by the way, Tyler. We invoked the init function, and the init function takes parameters, and these parameter becomes values coming from files, and these values initialize the properties. And now once the properties are initialized, you can return them. So you can say, get me this and get me that, and you'll be able to get them.
Oh, okay,
Like,
right, okay.
like right
Easy.
here, right here.
Okay.
Let me show you now. If I run this one more time, see, I populated, I initialized. So initialize one object at a time from each movie record or each show record, which is also a line, which is a line in the file. Okay, so now I'm looping into the lines into the file. I'm breaking these lines by comma right here. I break it here, and I break it here, and I break it here. Now I'm taking all these broken pieces and I pass them to the constructor that was helpless before I did this, right? And now I created a fully populated object. This fully populated object had values that came directly from the line that we're reading. So when I say get me the ID, it gives me the ID of the current line that I'm reading. And I can prove it to you. Current line show ID. So if I do that, you're gonna see now that each line, now I'm reading this line here, which is the first one, is right here. And I'm reading the remaining components of that line. I'm just pushing them aside to make it look really pretty. But here there's a movie, there's Norm of the North, right here, Norm of the North. And it's a movie, and the release year was 2019. Now if I go another loop, it means I'm gonna read the next line, okay? And that next line is gonna be broken into components using the split function, and is gonna give me the ID here. That's the next line, and this is the movie that belongs to this next line, and so on and so forth. So in order for me to keep track of these objects that I'm creating, I just store them in a list. That's all I did. But if I get rid of this, I'm still reading the file and creating objects in the fly, and I'm printing them, except that I'm not storing them. I'm just not storing the objects anymore. But by creating an empty list and populating it as I'm creating the objects, I'm able to come here and I print the same value here. But if I comment out these guys like that, now if I'm trying to read it, it's gonna give me an error. Well, it didn't give me an error because this guy was already there. I'm gonna keep it empty, and I'm not populating it. Now if I'm saying give me this, is not gonna give me anything. It's not giving me anything because it's an empty list. Because I did not add the objects here into the list. This is a little bit of a complex example, but it's also very comprehensive too. It really shows you how you can read and write, how you can read from a file, how you can process the text in the file, how you can create objects, how you can populate the objects, how you can access the properties inside the object, and then how you can store them into a list, and you can use that list down the road, and then you can do something with it. Like you really want to, well, now I have to run it one more time because every time, okay, because I need to uncomment this, I need to save him. Now, as you can see, now when I print the titles, it will give me the titles. I can say get me the year, like that. It's gonna give me the years. If I ask for the show type, it's gonna give me the show type, and so on. And if I want to change anything, well, say I want to change that movie from this very long name into a short name, then I will create a function called set title. I don't have it here, but I could create it. I'm gonna define another function that's called set title, like that. Sorry, it's gonna have to take a self, and it's gonna take a new title to replace the property here. Okay, so this is myself, self, like that, and I'm gonna pass the new title like this. Now if I go down here and I want to replace, I'm just say I'm gonna get the title, the old title first, and then when I use, so instead of having that very long name, I'm gonna use a shorter name for it. Set the title, and I'm going to print the title after I set it. So let me do that. And okay, we need to run this one more time because I might have not run it. Set title. Okay, now if I come back here, what does it say? It has no attribute set title. Okay, what did we do here? Did we create it as a function? Okay. Because we call it, no, we call it the title, like that. Okay, so read one more time. All right, we come here, and we'll come here. Here we go. As you can see, the long title here has become a very short title because we created a function called set title. So you can create set and get functions. They call these guys modifiers and accessors in some programming languages, and usually it's a very good practice to create these set and get functions immediately after you create your class. And as a matter of fact, some programming languages have advanced IDEs like Java and for Eclipse, or Eclipse for Java, or IntelliJ. They basically generate a class. When they create a class like that, they generate all these functions for you because they are considered, as you can see, very important if you need to get a value or you need to set a value. So they become very useful. And then you add anything else you want, like say for the grocery item, you want to use the quantity, and you also want to use the price, and you want to multiply them together. You basically create a function called get the total before tax, and then you get another function that says get the total after tax, and maybe this function is going to take a parameter with the tax rate coming from what state, and so on. So any other question you guys have? Okay, I guess this is good then. I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys might have in the future, even beyond the point of the class. And the videos are gonna be available online. If you guys want me to post that video online, I'm happy to post it. I said I won't be sharing it, but I'm happy to post it if you need it. I can make it private video if you want, and I can share it privately. It really depends on whether you want it or not. So just let me know you wanna see it published or not, and I'm happy to share with you. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. David? Tyler? All right then. Well, thanks to both of you, and let me know if you guys. Okay, let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm happy to answer any question you have. All right. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, David. And let me know if you guys need anything. I'm happy to answer, like I said. You guys take care.